Welcome to Mpowered Living. I'm Sheu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Mpowered Living. I'm your host, Sheu, and my guest today is Jasmyn Quianna. Jasmyn is a speaker, coach, and guide for women who are ready to stop living on autopilot and start reconnecting with who they really are. Her journey took her from the world of clinical research and professional success into a much deeper exploration of healing, alignment, and personal truth. In this episode, we talk about what happens when the life you've worked so hard to build no longer feels like home, why so many people confuse achievement with fulfillment, and how learning to trust yourself can become the beginning of real freedom. We also explore the cost of constantly doing things the right way, the quiet ways people lose themselves over time, and what it takes to return to a life that actually feels honest, grounded, and whole. This is a moving, reflective conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Let's dive in. Jasmyn, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get started. A lot of people struggle to really express who they are, especially at work. What do you think that is?
Primarily because we have been literally taught the opposite our whole lives, right? To stay in line, to act professional, to be the good child, all the conditioning, the program that we've all experienced, right? For whatever reason, our parents, culture, religion, all those things.
And how does somebody break out of that?
That's a complicated question, right? If it were only so simple. So it's like it sounds it's a complicated question, but at the same time, it's like an easy solution. Yeah, it's one of those easier said than done type of things. So it really is just honoring your truth and who you are at your core and just removing the mask and being yourself. Now, the steps to doing that,
Yeah.
not so easy, but it's really simple.
What does that mean, honoring your true? Because for someone who might be listening who has spent their entire life driving, putting on a mask, living somebody else's definition of success, how do you even know what that true is? For so many of us, we've like completely lost touch with that. It's hard to even recalibrate back to true when it's so far removed.
That's a great question, and you're so right, so true. Because I remember I had a conversation with my mom, and she said it had been like she doesn't even remember the last time she had like a true dream or vision for herself, like since she was maybe a little kid. And I thought that that was so sad. But to your point, it really is dependent on how deep you are in the mask and in how far out of alignment you are with your truth. It really does take, I guess, a threefold thing. Number one, like if you look around and you realize, okay, this is not the life that I imagined for myself. If you can't see it, then you can at least feel it. So does your life feel good? Does it feel like the life you would desire for yourself or you had hoped for yourself? And then two, a lot of times we have to work backwards if we don't have like a vision in front of us on like you said, well, how do I know if I'm so far removed? Well, then you can work your way backwards, starting with the things that you know you don't like or that does not feel good, either or, depending on what resonates better with you. And as you slowly start to check off and tick off, okay, what does not feel good? What do I not like? Then slowly the truth of what is actually for you, what is actually underneath all of the layers of everybody else, all the limiting beliefs, all the stuff, then slowly they kind of become revealed.
Okay, let's talk about that limiting beliefs because I'm curious what you have seen as some of the most common limiting beliefs and What is your advice on how to break free from those?
The most common one, and it comes in different forms, but all kind of going back to the same thing, is that you have to prove yourself or prove your worth or deserve,
Earn
you
it?
know, earn it even. It's all in that same boat, right? Not that you can just have it or do it or be it because of who or what you are, but it really is attached to this external level of things that you have to do in order to even be worthy of hitting the goal, receiving the thing, having the life essentially. So that's kind of the most common one that I see, which underneath all of that is really truly kind of rooted in that we aren't enough as we are. So that is like a whole nother layer then that you have to go and deal with, which goes back to what we said in the very beginning and how did we get here and that the conditioning, the programming, the mask, right? We're literally taught and trained to be the opposite. And it's not that our parents or anybody's doing it consciously. It really is just a part of the system, unfortunately. So it's not one person or one specific area to blame. It's just awareness. And so I think the second part you asked was how do you break free, right? So again, it's easier said than done, right? It's one of those things, all those things we talk about, but it really is going back to truth. It's so funny because in my book, chapter 5 is the self-honesty chapter, but I actually wrote that one first, even though it's now chapter 5. And when I think about all the things like the aha moments, the epiphanies, the light bulbs, all the big, awakening type of moments, it really boiled down to me getting super, super, super real with myself and honest with myself, which creates a certain level of grief and pain. So it really goes back to honesty. And you're only going to be able to be as honest with yourself as you are in terms of how far and how deep you are willing to, experience whatever that pain or grief or change might come with it.
Okay, earlier you mentioned like take a look at your life and just feel into it. Feel if it feels like the life that you wanted to be living. And if not, what are the things that you are unhappy about, the things that are not really bringing you joy? If somebody identifies something that is going on in their life, an activity that they've committed to, a person that they're in relationship with, whatever it is, but there's something in their life that they realize that they need to step away from, create some space from, how do you suggest that they do that? Especially for somebody who might be more non-confrontational or who might have been doing that thing or be with that person for an extended period of time and that has now become really part of their ingrained into their life. How does somebody step away from something like that?
So number one, support, especially if you're deeply ingrained, like you said, you definitely need support. So whether that's a therapist or a coach or a family member, preferably someone who has walked the path and they have experience firsthand with going through whatever that thing is, but definitely support so that you can have like that third party objective view, especially if you're deep, deep in it, you really probably won't have the level of awareness that it takes. And you may not even have the level of courage or I guess expansion that requires in terms of like your nervous system and identity piece of things because you really are once you're like you said really deeply ingrained you really do have on this mask, at least I know I did, and people that I've worked with, clients that I've had, you really have on this mask and you kind of associate that as who you are and your personality and that is your identity, so you literally don't even think that that's a choice or option, like you said, to say no or to walk away or whatever the thing is. So having support can help you overcome all of those things. And if you don't have a physical person support, let's just say for whatever reason you can't get the therapist or the coach, then that's when you can go to books. And, you don't have to necessarily meet the author for them to become a mentor, or you can go to YouTube channels or podcasts like your podcast. You can really create kind of like your own mastermind through these things. It doesn't necessarily, if you don't have access to an actual person. So you really have to kind of cultivate this community, whether it's physical, people that you can, physically interact with, or podcasts, books, whatever that may be, to really kind of reprogram, rewire, decondition your mindset. And then for me, I've been doing a lot of nervous system work and expanding my capacity, because with all those changes, it's like literally blowing up your life, it feels like sometimes. Not that you have to blow up your life, but even the slightest change sometimes can feel like a massive threat to your nervous system, because change is uncomfortable, and the unknown is a type of change. So it doesn't have to be something major for it to feel like the bear is chasing you. So I would also add, outside support, and then some type of nervous system regulation or expansion support as well.
Okay, I want to come back to the nervous system regulation support in a second, but you mentioned your personal experience. So can you just share? I know that you have talked about how you had built a really successful life on paper, but you still felt disconnected internally. What were some of the things that you personally noticed that you helped you realize that something was off?
So throughout my life, like even I would say as far back as probably college, grad school, early on in my corporate career, there were always these little nudges or moments of where I felt like this isn't it. But I felt like I needed to push myself through, because what else was I gonna do? I didn't feel like I was creative. I wasn't the artistic, person that could just come up with these ideas. I was the science person. So I just felt like that was my lane and I needed to stick in it. I had to stick in it rather. So whenever I felt these little nudges, whether it was a gut feeling or an anxiety raising up, or even full blown panic attacks, it was always kinda compartmentalizing it and put it in this box of, like, that has nothing to do with, it being tied to I'm going on the wrong path type of thing. So I always kinda just ignored those feelings, and it even got to a point where it's almost like feeling like you're walking around with this cloud hanging over your head and, like, this heaviness on your chest. At least that's some of my feelings. And even still, I just push through. It's like as the high achiever or the leader, the visionary, the creator, whoever's listening, you're just taught and trained to push through, right? And ignore all of those signs and symptoms, but that's literally your body sending you messages attempting to get your attention, and we're kind of taught to overlook it. And it started getting to the point where there were more physical symptoms like migraines and pain in my neck and shoulder and degenerating herniated discs and all of those physical things, abdominal issues, a point where it was like this ulcer type of pain that I started experiencing all these different things that are coming up, right? So it went from this mental and emotional messages my body was sending me until it literally had to scream and start breaking down. And it wasn't until I just could not take it anymore, not only on a physical, mental level, but in an emotional and spiritual level, that's when I finally started to listen. And it really became unbearable with maybe crying all the time or just crying randomly or crying just because, and you really couldn't pinpoint it to a specific thing or issue, keeping in mind everything else externally looks great, because I had the corporate clinical research career, and then I also started a career coaching business, and everything externally, you're making all this money, you've hit the goals and everything looks great, but inside you just literally feel like you're drowning.
Okay, let's go back to the nervous system regulation because I think that ties so closely to what you just said. You just feel like you're drowning. So, your current work is focused on this nervous system regulation. Can you tell us what that means and what it looks like in practice?
First and foremost, with especially, the type of listeners that you have, the high achievers, we are always in kind of like this busy overdrive mode, right? And so when you're constantly in that, it's like your nervous system is kind of hypervigilant. And the nervous system, in short, its main purpose, it's really its only purpose, is to keep us safe and to support us if we aren't safe in terms of, if we need to run away or whatever is going to serve us in that moment to keep us, our body, our being safe. And so when it comes to being this overachieving, busy, overworking, maybe over pleasing, over committed, over everything person, your nervous system becomes so out of whack, meaning maybe it's too going up too high, or maybe it's too low, or maybe it's just like flat and in between, which goes back to the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses, which is the four responses that it has on a biological level. Then you get stuck in a place where it's supposed to be temporary and it's supposed to serve you in those truly dangerous moments to help you get away or to help you shut down if something is too overwhelming. But then it becomes, instead of an acute response, which is was actually designed to serve us, it becomes chronic, meaning it's just operating in that way all of the time. And that completely throws off everything in our bodies, because then on a physiological level, we have systems and other, neurochemical transmitters, all these things running through our body, hormones even, that are always running that should be turned off, like cortisol, for example. So it's creating all these other kind of downstream effects of just throwing everything off essentially. And we're getting stuck in that state. And we're thinking, what's wrong with me? For example, you feel like I keep procrastinating. That's one thing. Like, why do I keep procrastinating? But your nervous system might just be so overshot that it literally had to shut down. And it's kind of in a freeze state. And it's literally just doing its job, which is to protect you because you've been doing too much. So you're trying to push against a system that is literally trying to save you and protect you. And then it's this push pull and it just makes it worse. Say another one could be like the chronic busyness and feeling like you always have to do something and you cannot rest or relaxing or even taking a moment. You feel like you're going to become lazy or you're going to get behind, whatever the fears, that are for you personally that come up. You're overstimulated and you're overregulated. And you can't even, then it's when you're sleeping, you can't even get a good night's sleep or good night's rest because your body's, your mind's constantly racing and you're not properly releasing the melatonin, all the other things that go along with it. So that's just a couple of examples of how you're, chronically in this out of whack, for lack of a better word, state. And you're just staying in there and your body is having a hard time getting back in a regulated space because we haven't taken the time to do so. And until we take the time to do so, it pretty much stays there. So you might be experiencing fatigue or nausea or something like that, wondering what's wrong with me when really your nervous system really just needs a reboot.
Okay, how do we do that? How do we reboot our nervous system?
So somatic practices are a good way, and it really doesn't take a lot to get the process started, and it doesn't take a lot on a daily basis. So it's not one of those things where you feel like you need to take this hour-long class every day or do even like these really tough workouts. It's really the smallest, most gentle movements that have the greatest impact and the biggest reward and effects when it comes to rebooting it. So something as simple as like literally putting your hand on your chest or your heart space and you can gently rock back and forth or you can tap. That's another thing. You can do the same thing and put it on your heart and then also on your gut, on your stomach, depending on, what feels, and you really have to feel into what feels good for you. And you'll know because your body, it'll almost feel like a deep breath of fresh air when you're doing it. And it sounds like the craziest thing, right? To say, you mean I could just do this this one little thing and it's gonna do all of that. And I was the person that said that. Like that's definitely not gonna work. That's crazy. But no, it does. It really does. Like literally just putting your hand on your heart or your chest space and like gently rocking side to side or even forward. All of that is based in the somatic practices. And it helps calm you down and essentially tell your body that you are safe. There's also box breathing where, you inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. And then the inhale is shorter than the exhale. And then you pause in between the two. So that's another thing. And all of those things are just simply telling your nervous system that it's safe, you're safe, and it's safe to be here on earth living.
What are some of your favorite practices, your personal favorites?
I would say mine has been there's some I can't really show you guys now, but there's some hip somatic exercises. So if you want to Google them or look on YouTube, there's the workout which she has some really good hip somatic exercise programs. And it's like I said, it's the smallest, most gentlest, like maybe some of the exercises are like 2 minutes, for example, for the day, and I think the longest one is probably like 10 minutes, but I didn't even realize how much on an energetic level, how much of those emotions that we talked about earlier, all the things that I was feeling when I was in the burnout exhaustion mode, they were stored in my body and specifically in my hips.
Mm.
And doing those little subtle movements, like maybe swaying your feet, like laying flat on the floor, for example, and just swaying your feet back and forth, and it really activates, the rotator cuff in your hip, and it's the craziest thing, but for me, the very first time I did it, I just burst out in tears because it's literally releasing all of that energy, all of those emotions that have been stored in your body from the push, the grind, the hustle that we've been the hamster wheel for years and years. And it's just the smallest thing. And it's so crazy how it works, but it works.
Where is the most common place for women to store that stress? And then what about for men?
I'm not sure for men, but for women, I would say maybe a tie between the neck and the
Mm.
shoulders, and then also the hips. But it seems like a lot of people that I've spoken to, they always say that the neck, the shoulders, especially for us women, since we're expected to handle it all. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I'm gonna try some of those, especially the hips. I haven't done that before, so I'll definitely try that. I know that now, after your big aha moment, right? You've started doing this work, and now you're being really intentional about building a life that's aligned with your values. What does that alignment actually look like in your day to day life?
So, first of all, it's not perfect.
Saying that because it's hard to remember that, right? Sometimes we see like the social media highlights and we're like, look at them. Their life is everything.
Okay.
They don't procrastinate. They got everything together.
You got it all together, right? Yeah, so no, I definitely want to start with that. It's not like I've reached some mountaintop and I'm like, oh, I'm here. And every day is like, yay, I'm here. No, absolutely not. But it is the biggest thing is the level of awareness, and because of that awareness, being able to, when I'm out of alignment, meaning maybe I'm people pleasing, maybe I've said yes to something that I know I had no business saying yes to because, my schedule is too tight, or I have not drinking, the amount of water I want to drink for the day. So I feel dehydrated, or I've eaten a bunch of junk. So I haven't really properly nourished like whatever it is in terms of an act of love to myself. When I feel like I'm out of alignment, before it was this extreme criticism, extreme judgment. I almost went on this like beat down
Yeah.
session every time. And now it's more and more so looks like compassion and grace and forgiveness, even gratitude for showing me where I was out of alignment So now I know, I have the awareness so then I can get back in alignment versus like continuing on that path until my body's screaming at me because now I can make a new choice in that moment, right? And then really extending that compassion and grace and forgiveness to make a change in that moment. Guilt-free, shame-free, because that was another thing that I was always doing, always blaming and shaming and guilting myself for every little thing. I should have did more, I didn't do enough, why did it take me so long? All the things that the typical high achieving types of people do. And so now, because things are gonna come up regardless of how far you are on your journey, your self-love journey, things are always gonna come up. Life is never gonna be perfect. It's always gonna be challenges, but it's a matter of how you handle them now and how you're moving through life. Is it just this busy, as fast as you can type of which is that was me. It was literally I hit this goal, check this box, and it was every day that's just what I was doing versus now it's more so surrendering and doing things that are truly in alignment. And alignment meaning like with my intuition, what I feel like I'm being divinely guided to, what I feel like is truly serving me and my purpose and my mission as a whole. That's what I mean when I say alignment, but really making those choices day by day, one step at a time, starting my day with quiet and peace and calm and relaxation, getting up early so that I can do that versus jumping out of the bed and I'm on go mode, having check ins throughout the day where I'm asking myself, how do you feel? Are you, moving in alignment? Are you operating from survival or is it love? And then at the end of the day, doing the same thing, kind of having a quick check in, same types of things to calm myself down, winding down, having like a bedtime routine. And those things aren't perfect. Some days I'll be so exhausted, I might skip that night or wake up that morning a little bit later and, the things didn't happen. So none of it is about perfectly doing it every single day, the perfect way, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 306, that's not the goal, but to just create awareness and do it more times than not. And then giving yourself the space and the grace to realign when you do find yourself kind of out of alignment or missing the mark, so to speak.
Okay, so you used the word surrender just now. I'm curious because when I think about the moments, and maybe I'm not doing it correctly, so you can maybe coach me a little bit. But when I think about surrendering, I end up in a place where I've said yes to everything because I've just like surrendered my boundaries, maybe I'm doing surrender wrong. I don't know. But can you give me a little guidance on how to surrender, but still not end up in a place where now I'm like over extended because I've surrendered too much?
That's a great question. So when I say surrender, meaning more so like surrendering to the process versus like trying to push, force, try, make happen like that. It's more so like a push type of feel of getting through your day and like grinding and hustling to make things happen versus surrendering is more so like operating and moving from a space of divine timing and allowing your frequency, your vibration, your being, your identity to attract what you want, which is essentially what my book is about is like when you're operating from that space of absolute self-love, then you really are kind of operating at the highest frequency. And then you start to naturally attract those things, those people, those places, events, experiences into your life without having to wake up every day and feel like you have to hit the ground running and hustle and grind to get them. Not that there is no action involved, because there's definitely action, but it's aligned action versus you feeling like you have to say yes to all the things. So, for the example that you gave, feeling like you're overextending yourself, not surrendering from a place of like, okay, now I'm opening up myself to all the possibilities and all the things that come my way. But surrendering meaning like to take the time and get quiet in your mind to figure out what's truly in alignment for you to actually say yes to, meaning based upon your goals and your purpose, your mission, whatever's going on in your life, what is truly a match for that? Because whatever you say yes to, you automatically by default say no to something else. So it's just a matter of feeling into what is actually meant for you versus what you feel like you have to do or you should do or you owe somebody to do type of thing.
So, in our conversation, it feels like you're really grounded in who you are and you're speaking from a place of real, authentic confidence. What was the mindset shift that was required for you to get to this level of grounded confidence?
It's funny you say that, and I laugh because I feel like
Yeah.
is Ed talking about me?
I mean, you're just, like, real and authentic, you know? And so I'm just curious, like, what is required to get to a place like that?
So, and again, it's not perfect. Trust me. I have my meltdown moments still.
We all do though, right? That's part of human life. That's the human experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I would say it really, for me, I had really just got so burned out, so exhausted, which is what I'm hoping that spreading the word can help people avoid getting to that, that place. Not that I was at rock bottom externally anyways, but on the inside, I was definitely at rock bottom. But I had really gotten to that place where I could not carry the mask anymore. It was just too hard to do the people pleasing, to be the yes woman, to do all the things. And on top of that, it wasn't even serving me because I still wasn't happy. I still wasn't fulfilled, hitting all the goals, achieving all the things, doing all the things. So going back to the honesty thing again, I had to get really real with myself in terms of where I actually wanted to go with my life, what I actually envisioned for myself, and doing whatever it took by any means necessary to create that for myself. Which the first thing was to get rid of the mask. And that felt like one of the hardest things to do. Like, no, that can't be the first thing because that's how I've been surviving. Now you want me to be vulnerable and share my stories and be open and honest. But that's really what it is. And then life actually, in the beginning, is definitely terrifying and challenging and all the things, but it actually gets lighter because you no longer have to put on this face everywhere you go and everywhere you show up. And because that is draining. And you don't even realize how draining it is until you have, let it all go. That's going back to the surrendering thing, like surrendering to that process of letting it all go, letting the chips fall where they may, and just taking care of you, coming home to you, and really getting to know you and who you actually are underneath, all of that crap.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, you have mentioned your book. Can you share a little bit about what inspired you to write the book and then share about the book in general?
So, what inspired me? That was a whole other process of surrendering because I did not want to write this book. I did not plan I did not plan to write a book, especially not about self-love because I felt like I was probably in the self-hate category. At least at one point, I definitely was. So for me to be talking about self-love, I just felt like it was just not appropriate. Like, who am I to be telling people about self-love when I'm just trying to get out of the self-hate category? So it was really this process of once I had this whole meltdown moment in my office one day with my corporate job, and I had the career coaching business, and things were booming on the outside, but on the inside they were falling apart. And I just asked God, the universe, the angels, whoever, whatever was listening to help me change my life. I had these flood of questions coming to me and to help me do something different because this is not it. It cannot be it. Like this is miserable. And so then it was kind of these slow, different events that randomly happened. Like got an email from the Hay House writers community. They had this camp for writers. I didn't sign up for it. No one said they signed me up for it. I don't know how it got in my inbox, but I signed up for it. All the while just thinking, well, I like to read. Most of my favorite authors are Hay House authors, so why not just join and, figure out the the writing process. So things like that. And then writing coaches started reaching out to me, and it's like all these different things that if I sat here and told you all of them, you'd be like, no way. And then I slowly started to get divine guidance that I'm going to write this book. And I'm like, well, whatever. Literally resisting all of it, did not want to surrender to the process at all. And then eventually, slowly, these pillars came to me, or these words at first. I didn't see them as pillars or anything to do with self love, but these words. And then slowly unravel that, okay, well, these are going to be self love pillars. And then this whole concept of absolute self love came through. And this is your book type of thing. It was literally like these series of events that started to happen. And keeping in mind, this whole time, I definitely was resistant. I did not want to write it. And then when I originally said, okay, I'm gonna kind of started to, slowly entertain the idea, I definitely didn't plan on including all these stories about me, because every single chapter starts with a story of kind of me living through that particular pillar, that particular lesson, and how, a visual of what it looks like in reality. And then I get into the practices and how to apply it. So it was a lot of me literally going back to that mask. Like, I was completely naked and it was very uncomfortable, but it really sent me on this, like everything that I discussed in the book, it is kind of me going through my own absolute self-love journey in real time, because I really had to, like, I've been going to therapy and stuff forever, but this book writing process really stripped me in ways that therapy and all the other, healing modalities that I've done, it stripped me in a way that none of these things ever did, or I guess even could. And so I just really put it all out there. Thanks to my amazing coach and mentor, Erin Worley. She really helped me go deep on a level that I never wanted to, but definitely didn't even imagine that I could. Going back to what you said about me being confident, it was a roller coaster every day of like push and pull. I do not want to do this.
Yeah.
But eventually it all came out and voila.
Amazing. Can you share about the pillars?
Yeah, so there's 12 self-love pillars. The first one is self-realization. The second one is self-awareness. And then there is self-honesty, self-reflection, self-accountability, self-compassion, self-forgiveness. What am I? Self-trust, self-belief, self-devotion, which is made up of three. I call them the trilogy: self-care, self-attention, and self-affection. Definitely self-care came through as one of them, but not as like a main one, which I know mainstream self-love is mostly self-care focus and self-worth and self-value, right? But it's a part of self-devotion, and then self-companionship and self-celebration. And so all 12 make up absolute self-love, which is essentially the manifestation secret that no one really talks about, is falling madly in love with yourself. Like, that is the actual strategy. And then everything else just kind of naturally follows. You get the downloads on the actual, you know, physical step strategies to take. You start attracting the resources, the people, the tools, the systems that you need. It all falls into place when you're operating and moving from that space of absolute self love. And then going back to the ones that most people mention, like self-value, self-worth, those are kind of like the fruits of that labor of falling in love with yourself. Everything else just comes naturally, because there's no way you can have all these pillars and not naturally see your worth and your value independent of what you're doing, achieving physically, externally. So you start to see your inherent worth, your inherent value naturally, all because of these other things.
Amazing. Congratulations on that book. I'm glad you powered through it and put it out in the world.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do a couple of rapid fire questions. A
Okay.
habit that keeps you grounded?
A habit that keeps me grounded, I wanna say in between taking my morning walks and doing daily light work on myself. One of the 2.
A belief that people need to let go of.
That there's a such thing as limitations and that there's a such thing as realistic or, rational. The everything that anybody's ever done that was, perceived as genius or great, people forget that first they call them delusional and crazy. So, letting all limits go and realizing that we have infinite potentialities as divine limitless creators.
Question people should be asking themselves regularly.
Does this serve me? Is this serving me, my goals, my life, my purpose, my mission? Does this serve me?
The biggest lie that you've seen people believe about success.
That you have to earn it, prove it, this hard worker mindset that you think your way into it when it's really the opposite. Success is built from the inside out versus the outside in, which I learned the hard way.
And if someone is listening and they are feeling disconnected from themselves, from their direction, what's one small step that they can take to reconnect?
One small step, going back to what we said about that practice, the somatic practice. Literally put your hand on your chest, on your heart center space, and you can gently rock back and forth, or you can just close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths, inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth, and closing your eyes. That resets, not to get into a bunch of science stuff, but essentially that resets that dysregulation that you're experiencing on a nervous system level. Taking that couple seconds to do that one thing can put you in a whole different space.
Jasmine, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been such a joy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Anne, for having me. I've had so much fun.
Thanks for tuning in to Empowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.